Hellos, hellos, hellos. I hope you are doing very well. Welcome, welcome, wherever you are watching us from. Good evening, good evening. It says that we are connected, but it also says that we are not connected. So let me know where you are watching us from tonight as we go live. And I've got my co hostess, and she'll be joining in just now. Good evening. What's happening?
Hello,
Uh,
hello.
Awesome stuff. We can hear you.
Okay,
I'm
great.
just trying to check to see whether we are actually live on our YouTube. It tells me that there's a little bit of a problem. But before we go on, how's been your day? How's been your day? Retabile.
I've been camping at CPUT today. We are
Yeah,
having some challenges there with our payments, and so today I thought, not a day longer, and we were literally camping there, waiting for the HOD to go home, so we could stop her on the way out. But then,
yeah.
luckily, she did send out somebody to make an appointment for us for next week. So, yeah. So it's been eventful, and I've had some visitors at the office today. We had some nice chats about properties that they're busy buying. And yeah, it was just a awesome day at the office, I guess.
Another day at the office. That's what it basically means. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you and welcome. This is Thursday. We call this Step Up. Pass it on. And this is what we are here all about. And we're talking about property in general. And every Thursday at the top of the hour, myself, I come out, Rita comes out, and we discuss a specific thingy. I'm going to call it a specific thingy. Um, and that it is a topic, a different topic every night, every Thursday night, right? And if you would like us to talk about a specific topic, you can let us know in the comments, and we will definitely consider it for the upcoming topics. And from time to time, we also have guests, but tonight it is just the two of us. We're going to be running solo, the two of us, and we are wanting to talk about a conversation that many people have been thinking about and struggling with. And they are thinking, how best can we do that? And in the next 15 minutes or so, Rita and I, we're going to try to unpack it. And we can also be able to answer a little bit of questions right at the end. So as we go along, whatever question it is, whether it is for a topic of today or any other question in general, for as long as it is related to property, we will answer that question for you. So what is the topic for today?
Today, we're going to talk a little bit about accreditation. Um, what does it mean to be accredited? Why should you get accredited? How do you get accredited? And that's obviously accredited for what? For student accommodation, okay? So it's all about the student accommodation and the accreditation process of your property for you to be able to have NS for students.
So I get that a lot. People buying
Mm-mm.
properties out there, and they ask me the question, so how do I get accredited? That's the first thing that a lot of people do. And I also get another question where a lot of people say, if the property is not accredited, I won't buy it. So maybe let's start our departure point, Rita, in terms of actually um, what's more advisable. I don't want to say advisable, but what's more practical. I'm a newbie and I know nothing about property. And no, I know a little bit about property, and now I'm wanting to do student accommodation. And I buy, should I be buying a property that is already accredited, and or should I buy a property and then go through the process myself? With what you know today, having gone through the process of being accredited on different properties,
Mm-mm.
and also being an author of a student accommodation book that's coming out soon, um, what's your thinking then?
So I think if you're a newbie, you're completely new, you've never done student accommodation before, and you're not working, you want to kind of handle it yourself. So you're not working with somebody that has experience, right? Then I would say that it's probably better to get something that is accredited and that has students, and you're kind of buying that property with all the furniture and everything included already, right?
Mm.
Because in the accreditation
Which
process, a
is
lot
which
of
is rare, by the way, isn't it?
yeah, and you're gonna pay a premium for that property. Okay, it's much more expensive than buying something that's not yet accredited. So, and the accreditation process, depending on where the house is or the property is, it's not that difficult. So you can do it yourself, but it's just about knowing how to do it and when, most importantly, when to do it as well. So if you're new, brand new into something, it's probably better to get something that's accredited, but then you're going to pay for it. It's definitely going to be more expensive.
Cool. I really like that. Thank you for the feedback. So let's assume that, I mean, not let's assume, but let's have the conversation of, um, for a lot of people, maybe they may not know about this, but if you've got a property and you're doing student accommodation, why would you need to be accredited? Because I've also met people who are not accredited and they run student accommodation and they ask me the question, why should I be accredited?
Yeah.
In your experience, why would one be need to be compliant being accredited, and who are those bodies that can accredit can vet you to be accredited? So let's talk about the maybe in Western Cape, in Gauteng, and maybe Tshwane as well. Maybe generalize it because I think it differs from university to university. But let's
Mm.
give some guidance here in terms of how does it work.
So I think, people also um, don't understand a lot of times that about who accredits you. Okay. But first of all, why should you be accredited? Now, in some places, most universities out there, if you want to house NS for students, National Student Financial Aid Scheme, you will need to be accredited, okay, for you to get rental from these students. Now, what is the NSFIS? NSFIS is a bursary that's given by the government to students from low income households, right? And if you want to get rent from those bursaries, you have to be accredited. Now, the rules, some places you can still get it without being accredited, but I would say the majority of places you will need to be accredited. Sometimes it's also so that the university can pay you directly and not the students, and then the students pay you. So in those cases, also a lot of times you have to be accredited to be paid those NSFIS bursary accommodation amounts, plus obviously your uh, to be paid directly by the university. So that is the main thing. But then I think also, we also need to just take a step back and say, but who accredits you? Because people get confused because now it's NS for students. And so they like, oh, I have to go to NSFIS to get my accreditation. And that's also not entirely correct because most of the universities, I'm talking universities and colleges now, your TVET colleges, those things are a bit different, but your universities, so your major institutions, um, the university must accredit you. They will send someone out, etc., but they accredit you, not NSFIS. They accredit on behalf of NSFIS. And that is also very important to understand.
Cool. So, but NSFAS is the only. It's not the only bursaries issuers out there. there's many organizations that give out bursaries.
Mhm.
And do they also dictate some form of accreditation as well?
Some of them do. We had a couple of students from the Department of Water Affairs and Forestry that had bursaries from there, and they only pay to accredited landlords. But then, we've also had ESCOM bursaries, and there you don't have to be accredited as long as the student is obviously happy with the service and the property. They don't care whether you're accredited or not. But I think it's more your government type of institutions that just wants to be safe, and they're like, okay, well, we know that being accredited means something. It means that that property complies to a certain standard, and therefore it's okay to place the student there. And so therefore there are some bursaries that will require that, and a lot of them that won't need that.
Right. You speak of the accreditation. What is the process of being accredited? So now that we know you don't go to NSFAS itself, but you go to the institution, to the learning institution. Is the vetting process the same institution from institution? Why are you laughing like that?
I wish it was the same. It would make my life so much easier. But then I wouldn't have a job, right? So
No, but they report to the same NSFAS. So clearly the benchmark should be the same, is it not?
it is and it isn't. So there are minimum norms and standards that comes is part of there's government regulations around that, which you can
Yeah.
Google very easily. Um, and those are sort of your minimum criteria of what you need. Okay, but what some of the universities have done is they took that and they said, okay, great, those are the minimum norms and standards, but that's too low below for our students. We want to have better standards, and that then becomes the standards that you must comply for that specific university. And that's
Right.
around, for instance, your ratio of toilets per student, showers per student. At one point, the University of Stellenbosch changed their rules from 7 students per shower to 5 students per shower. And all of a sudden, a lot of landlords had to sell their properties because they couldn't have enough students anymore to make it profitable. And
Mm.
all of a sudden, just we had a quick flood of properties in the market, and you have to be very careful to understand that, how many students will you actually have in the property, not what the landlord says necessarily, or how many beds you see, but based on the new norms and standards which is required for them. So it gets tricky.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, as we go along on this conversation, the conversation is not for me and Rita. It is to educate you as well. We're running this as a business already, so we get to grind in all of these every day. And we find ways in which we can win around navigating all of this. So I'm really encouraging you to ask any questions if you do have any in the comments, and then we can address those questions as we go along. Now, what are the general guidelines that has been set, or the minimum that you have seen that kind of like almost every university or learning institution sort of like abides by? And tonight we will speak about NSFAS because NSFAS is the biggest bursary issuer, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the only bursary that there is out there. There's plenty of them, but NSFAS is just a big one, and I think everyone
Yeah.
else now just kind of like hangs on to now. If it qualifies for NSFAS, it qualifies for all the other small ones. Um, but what are the minimum requirements if I'm thinking about doing student accommodation? What are the bare minimum that you have heard about, read about? Have they been changing quite a lot within the last year or within the last period of years, or not? They've been standard, so we can assume maybe within the next 2 years they'll still be the same, maybe.
Luckily, it's like a national government policy or legislation, right? So those things change slowly. Um, and it has been very standard ever since I started with student accommodation. It hasn't changed. And it's about the room sizes. So a single room must be 8 square meters, a double room must be 14 square meters, just to prevent overcrowding. And then you also have um, your bathrooms is also the other critical thing that you need to look out for. Um, I think the best, I'll give you the main ones, right? So your showers is 7 students per shower, 5 students per toilet. So if you have 20 students, you need 4 toilets and 3 showers. Um, so that is that ratio. Then you've got a ratio of a number of students per 4 plate stove, per microwave, per everything, and you must have at least a bed, a study desk, and a chair, and you must obviously have cupboards for the students, and then there's some universities that, so those are the main ones, and then there's lots of little funny ones, like you must have a bedside table, a bed lamp, side lamp, things like that, but they don't enforce those strictly. The big ones, like your bathrooms, your overcrowding, your size of your rooms, though, and also the common space. You need 1.5 square meters per person common space in your house. So your lounge, your kitchen, all of that counts as common space. So you have that as well. Those are the main ones, and then the other ones are like, sometimes they will ask for it and sometimes not. And then obviously your safety type of stuff, right? So your access control, there must be access control, and then of course there has to be fire safety, because that's quite a big one. So as part of your accreditation, they will require you to get a fire clearance type of certificate for your property.
All right, cool. Now, the how long does it last, the accreditation? So you get accredited this year. Is it 5 years? Is it for life? How does it work?
So I've seen that it's more from previous years that we have people that'll say, "Oh, I got accredited for 3 years," and so on. But in general, everywhere where we've gotten accreditation last year, where it was new accreditation that was given, or a renewal of accreditation, they've only given 1 year. So right now, there might be places that will give 2, 3 years and so on. But what I have seen from all the universities that we are at is that they are just renewing year on year. And I can kind of understand, because you don't know. Yes, your room sizes and that might not change necessarily, but all of a sudden, your showers are broken, or you've put double bunks in, that sort of thing. So they want to just come and check whether that accreditation is still valid every year, and make sure that your property still complies, even though it's received accreditation before. So it's almost just a double check, but they only make it valid for 1 year so that they have the opportunity to come and check again.
Do they come and check?
They do. So they will send out, in some universities, they actually use the SRC, the Student Representative Council. So those are actual students, senior students that'll come out and check. In some places, they've outsourced it to external people. Yeah, so you do, and some of them, they've got people in their office that is like a dedicated person that does that sort of thing. So they do come and check, yes.
If you're
I
not
think in
compliant,
2020 at some stage they were just accrediting without checking, but that was like a once off, right? After that they come and check.
and with when they have accredited you and they come out and something is wrong, um, you had a sliding door and that sliding door is broken. Um, how do they rectify that? Do they revoke your accreditation immediately? Do they notify you, come back and check? Like how is that managed?
No. So what they do is, depending on what your house has, everything that's included or not included. Some
Mm,
universities will give you like a grading, a grade A, B, C, one, two, three, whatever, where, and that is linked to the amount of rent that you can charge. So say, for instance, they come out to your property and they see there's no Wi-Fi, then you can't charge 3,000 a bed. You can only charge 1,500 a bed, because there must be
right.
money left over for the students to now buy these things, or get these items. Although Wi-Fi might be a bad example because you have to have Wi-Fi minimum standard. So that's, but there are situations where they will grade it like that, and that's linked to the amount of rent you will get. But what they will do for you is they'll say, listen, here's what we see, and the following three things must be changed. So sometimes they'll give a conditional accreditation and they'll say you have to go and update these three things. In Poch last year, there was one house where they wanted one of the windows to be not see-through. They wanted it to be closed. Um, they wanted an extra microwave. What else was it? And they wanted an extra shower. So, but they did give us time because it was quite early in the year, and there was still time to fix all of that. So once it was fixed, we contacted them. They came out again, they inspected again, and they gave us the full accreditation. So they do that sort of thing. I think, well, though, what's important is to understand the university that you're working with. It's like trying to get accreditation out of CPUT in Cape Town is nearly impossible. So far, for me, it has been impossible. Luckily, I don't need it to get paid, but it's just trying to get them to come out twice is going to be impossible if I struggle just to get them out once, right? But in Poch, they are very clear in terms of they come out, they give you an appointment, they actually pitch, they're there, they check, you get your letter, done. So they are very, very efficient. Whereas other ones, it's not gonna you're not gonna have that same experience. So I'm generalizing quite a lot in
Yeah.
my explanation.
Okay, cool. Now, for the fact that we are generalizing, we've heard that if you are accredited, you get paid directly with the university. So it means that you kind of like have one tenant. Is that true, or how does that work?
No, unfortunately not. So you still sit with all your students as your tenants. Now, at some places, even though you're accredited, they will still pay the student, and then the student must pay you. Doesn't matter whether you're accredited or not. And that is, for instance, as an example, at UCT, they work like that. But what's very nice with that process is that, great, the student then becomes responsible for the rent. However, the moment they don't pay, you send a message to the bursary officer and they will get suspended from school. So they're very strict like that. But that's why they can do it, because they have these very, very efficient processes in place. Um, but in other places, we still have to sign leases with every single student. We have to do the paperwork for every single student, send that in for approval, and they will give you like in some instances, they will bundle all the students together and they'll give you one payout. And in some instances, like at CPUT, we get 171 payments that I'm still waiting for, minus 7. So they actually, you still have all of those students as your tenants. You don't just have one tenant.
Okay, okay. So being accredited is still critical. You need it for compliance, for you to start getting paid, and over and above that, um, there is a process that is followed. There is different processes for different institutions. They have a foundation which they get from NASFAS, but there's more bursaries outside NASFAS ones. If anyone is stuck around accreditation, are you able to help?
Yeah, we can definitely assist. We do have some good connections in most of the large universities now, that we can assist to for landlords to get accredited.
Mm, mm.
And
Okay.
in some cases, it's also before you buy, please, you know, set up a consultation with me so I can just check your property. Because now what I've had recently is that guys come to me, the properties are about to register, and I'm like, yo, guys, your accreditation, because not there's so much that you have to submit for that accreditation. It's not just coming out and viewing your property, right? You, for instance, have to submit all of the property information. I kind of mentioned the fire certificate. That fire certificate can cost you up to 50,000 rands if you don't do some of those things yourself before, and you kind of just get an inspection signed off. But it can become a lot. Then, if for instance, if your drywalling was done incorrectly, it must have a certain spec in terms of burn rate, all of those things. And if you just buy a property without knowing these things, it can be a problem. Then you have to submit in Tshwane, for instance, you have to submit your occupation certificate for your building. Now, if you buy a building that is like 30 years old, good luck if you're going to find that thing lying in somebody's cupboard. And to recreate that takes months, and it's expensive because you have to have a roof inspection done, a glazing certificate done, a plumbing COC, electrical COC, etc., etc. So it becomes expensive. So when you just want to do 10 students for Tshwane University of Technology in a small place and you want to get accredited, I don't know if it's worth it. It's, to go through that effort and that expense to get it done for that small amount of students. So definitely before you go that route, those requirements are very different per university for accreditation. The background stuff, not the minimum norms and standards, but the other stuff that you don't necessarily see are very different per university. So please set up a consultation with me before you buy, so we can make it a requirement from the seller to give you that stuff, and you don't end up having to pay for it yourself.
Awesome stuff. Thanks very much for having us around today. We were answering the question around how can you simply get accredited for student accommodation, and Rita heads up our student accommodation business. And she's got a book that's coming out. When is your book coming out? We've been talking about this book.
It's been so. Here's the thing, okay? So it's been
Yeah,
published. It's everything. It's. I've got an ISBN number, everything. But
right.
then
When are you launching us? Tell us when you are
I
launching it.
so okay. So maybe if there's people that want to comment on this, okay? So when I first wrote the book, I wrote it very much from an instructional point of view. It's like, how do you do it? What's the things to look for? How do you find a property? So very instructional. Then the other day I was telling somebody stories. They wanted to know about student accommodation. And I ended up telling all these stories, these weird things that happened to us in
Yeah.
2020. And I was like, holy cow, how did I even survive that year? Okay. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized I forgot about this, I forgot about that. So I started writing the year of 2020 down, and all the crazy things about naked girls swearing at the neighbors, and all the good, the bad, the funny stories. And I wrote all of that down, and I'm like, wow, that's like now just doubled the amount of pages in my book. And so now I don't know, do I launch, or do I get this extra chapter edited and then launch? So I'm a bit conflicted now about that. I can't believe I forgot that to
Yeah.
begin with. Okay, I know
That's what.
it's stupid.
So that's why there is. I have seen books. Um, I'm looking here in my library to see whether I can see a book that has second, third edition. You know, that in my view, yeah, it's that I would do that. Maybe I would do a second edition or third edition. That's what I'll do. But before we go, We always encourage people to ask questions. I know that we're supposed to be closing off at 8:30, but there is one question that has come through, and there's a chap here that is called Neil. And Neil, thanks very much for your question. He's watching us from YouTube. And, and Neil's question actually comes from, I don't think it's his question, it's coming from Twitter, he says. So he's asking for a friend, right? So Neil says, so on Twitter, there have been a debate whether property is a good investment. Let's say, for instance, you buy a 1 million rand property and you receive 8,000 in rent, but the loan repayment is 10,000, which is potentially going to go up because the repo rate is just going up, I'm told. I haven't checked it out myself. So, but nonetheless, the argument is that will be the property a bad investment because it will be cash out of your pocket each month, right? But in essence, you are maybe only paying 3,000 in maintenance, with maintenance included. So his question here is he ends off his question to say, but after 20 years, you own a property and you only paid 3,000 a month. So Neil, I'm going to answer your question. I will go first around that. And I'm going to say the first one that I'm going to answer you is to say, hmm, any investment is anything that is supposed to be putting money in your pocket. That's the definition of an investment. So it's putting money in your pocket, right? So in this case, if I answer it from there, this is not an investment, right? Because you're losing money. You're losing 2,000 Rand out of pocket plus the maintenance ones. Potentially that's around about 5,000, if more, right? So is it an investment? No, it's not an investment because it's money out of pocket. Then your latter position is now let's assume that, but I'm only paying 3,000, 2,000, or whatever the case is out of my pocket, as opposed to the full amount of money. The question that I need to ask of you is, why did you buy the property in the first place? If you bought the property in the first place for investment properties, why haven't you gone to look for another property that you can buy for 1 million Rand and that can give you 2,000 Rand in your pocket? Which property would you go and buy? Would you still stick with this property here? Or would you go to the one that is giving you a positive cash flow and there is nothing out of your pocket? I think for many of us, we will go for the latter. But I think the tradition is that in our communities, we know this option that you have presented here. In my view, no, it's not an investment. I will leave it to Reta.
Yeah, it's definitely not. You end up paying for your tenant's lifestyle because they're living in a very nice property and you're paying them to live in your property. That's how I see it. So I'm like, I'm not paying you to live in my property. You must put money into my pocket because you want to continue to buy these investments and you're going to run out of the ability to supplement, right, those extra amounts. So how do you retire off one property? You can't really, right? So you need to build a portfolio, and for that you need properties that are putting money into your pocket, increasing your income, which then means you can go and buy more properties. But when it decreases the amount of income, you're going to be stuck very soon just being able to buy one. So and you do get, in the beginning, when I started, I was like, I struggled to find these properties, it was so hard, um because I was looking in the wrong for the wrong types of things. I was looking at a normal, buy a house, rent it out to a tenant. If it's a new one, you inevitably end up paying for those people. But and that's why I think, for me personally, why I fell in love with student accommodation there's two parts to it, and the one part is really the cash flow, because no matter how much the interest rate's going to go up, we're still going to be cash flow positive. Yes, it'll be less, but it's still going to bring money into our pockets every month if you buy them right. So yeah, not an investment in my view, even though your value might go up over time. For me, it's not really an investment, because you can't grow portfolio from that.
Awesome. Neil, one of my suggestion here is that a lot of people, they comment on Twitter. Are they doing this that they're doing? And I always say that if you're getting conversations with these ones, in my case, in most cases, I don't get in conversations like these ones. Not unless the individual that I'm having that conversation with is already doing that and I can see that. And then I can get engaged here. But I would say for the same 1 million rand, you may be able to get better value for your million rand if you're educating yourself on how to do it. And you can get properties that can give you. Imagine if you had a property that's giving you 5,000 rand on the same 1 million. That's what we talk about on here. And the people on Twitter, I don't think that they may think about it, but half of them, if not 90% of them, don't even do it. So why have the conversations there? I like to put actions first, to put actions first, rather than just to talk about stuff and it's not being practical. But that's for me. But Neil, thanks a lot for asking that question. I'm hoping that we have equipped you there. If you want to learn a little bit more about property, the education is there. Myself, Rita, we went through that education. That's how we've been able to get to where we are now. But we're going to close off for tonight. And I don't know when the book is coming out. You didn't tell us.
Okay, so I see there's somebody there that says extra chapter, please. So it's written, it's done. I don't have to worry about what covers and back pages, covers and colors and designs. So hopefully the editing will go really, really quick. So I want to get that done in the next 2 weeks, and then it's go, go, go time. Everything is set up. The ISB, everything is set up. It's just one extra
Again,
chapter.
again, you're not telling us when you're launching. I hope that
Okay,
by next, when we are live again, you will tell us when you'll
I
be
will. I
happy
will.
to
I'll have a
launch.
date.
Okay, awesome people. Peace out. We will check you out on the next videos.
Bye.